So, what's trending? Bridging your Catholic faith with your everyday life. You're listening to Trending with Timmerie on Relevant Radio.
What guy doesn't want to hear this? Ways to make your wife absolutely adore you. And are you verbally challenged and maybe you just don't know how to talk to your wife to get the conversation going and stimulated? You know what I mean when I say verbally challenged. I'm not trying to offend anyone. I was actually talking to my husband about these articles, and he's like, I really appreciate these tips. So we've got some tips for the dudes. We also have an enlightening conversation with our celebrity and royal matchmaker, Cristina Pineda from Matchmakers in the City. If you have a question for her, go ahead and give us a call. The number's 1-888-914-9149. Or head over to my Instagram or Twitter. You can find those at relevantradio.com/trending, where you can share your thoughts, questions, concerns. We will take those questions up with our resident matchmaker here on Trending in just a little bit. So be sure to give us a holler. So I saw this article on allprodad.com. It's titled Ways to Make Your Wife Adore You. The writer, Andrew Linder, says, can you remember back to the days when dating your spouse wasn't a chore? He gives some examples, such as when things that you used to say, gentlemen, caused your wife to smile and laugh far more easily now than perhaps an eye roll that you might receive, saying that maybe you need to work on those dad jokes. Or do you remember when she used to hold on to more of the words that you said and paid perhaps better attention, or vice versa? How do we get that back? Well, before we unpack this, because I'm going to give you some tips that I thought were really beneficial from allprodad.com and my commentary on them, I did find the title of this article intriguing. And it's something I see often in those like quick tips, how to, make something happen. Sometimes these tips and hacks can sound manipulative. When you see the title of this article, it's Ways to Make Your Wife Adore You. There's something problematic if that's how we look at this article. And I don't think that that's really how the article should be read, but it's clickbait, because I think a lot of men are like, yeah, I want that. But if that's the perspective, it's missing the big picture. And sorry, but it outright sounds manipulative. To be honest, it kind of sounds like a guy wanting to get something, if you know what I mean. So, what's the right perspective to have? There's this common saying that people say, and I get it, I respect it, I appreciate it, but it could be taken out of context or interpreted wrongly. It's the phrase, happy wife, happy life. And to be frank, when I hear some men say this, it sounds somewhat condescending. When I hear others say it, I hear that they genuinely mean, love my wife in order to have a good, loving life. But when we hear that phrase often, I think that happy wife, happy life mentality can also go with this same article title, Ways to Make Your Wife Adore You. It's not about being worshipped, and it's not about manipulating your spouse to get their approval. But it actually has to do with living in accord with the duties and responsibilities for the person God has entrusted you with as your spouse by the very vows you made at the altar. And I think that that's important to think about when we discuss various articles about hacks for enlightening and enriching your relationship with your spouse or even your dating relationship. Also, from the perspective of women, I think it's important that we're not looking for men to do these specific things that we're going to talk about in just a moment. Although they're good and they're beneficial for a marriage, they shouldn't be this pleasure and reward type of system that we're showing. In fact, I think some men think, well, if only I do this, I'll gain her respect or adoration. But in reality, regardless of whether or not our spouses deserve our respect, we should still show respect for them and ourselves. And I was actually thinking about this when I was thinking of the story of the comedian and actor Terry Crews. You may remember the episode, and actually we'll have to share this because if you didn't catch it, it was a great conversation that I had talking about Terry Crews and his life with his wife Rebecca and how he ended up having a pornography addiction for years. Long and short of it is their marriage nearly fell apart, but they were able to repair it. Why? Well, I think because his wife had enough respect for both herself and her spouse that she didn't make excuses. She had expectations, and she actually respected her husband and the decisions she made by saying, honey, hit the curb. You're kicked out. That didn't mean she didn't work with him to take the proper steps, but what was going on wasn't okay. But she still showed a level of respect toward him, even in the midst of his messiness. I think that's really important. I'll never forget an article I read some years ago from Matt Walsh when he was talking about husbands leading and being the leader of the family, essentially. And he was talking about how he didn't know how to lead when he got married, but because of the respect his wife showed, even when he maybe didn't earn or deserve that necessarily, she left that space for him to continue to grow in his role of leading the family. She showed respect even when he didn't know what to do, or maybe even how to love her. I mean, I think there are a lot of men who want to experience that happy wife, happy life, or make your wife adore you. But again, the question is, do we have the right perspective? So, enough of that. Here are some tips. If you're just joining us, you're listening to Trending with Timmerie, and it's our weekly marriage hour here on Trending. Joining me in just a few moments will be our resident celebrity and royal matchmaker. She won't tell me who the royals are that she's match made. Well, I guess the confidentiality has to stand, but we can dream, we can guess, we can hope, right? So Cristina will be joining me in just a little bit. If you have a question, give us a call or head over to social media to ask your question. We put some questions up there. So here are your hacks for helping your wife to love you by first loving her. And I would really say these are ways for husbands to better understand their wives and their needs. And again, this is from that article, All Pro Dad, that I've adapted. One of the tips is to listen with both your ears and your eyes. Now, his perspective was to eliminate distractions when you're talking to your spouse, to give your full attention. Also, I thought this was really important. Remember, communication isn't only verbal, it's also nonverbal. And this is part of what we lose when we reduce communication to it being predominantly communicated through technology, or when we're not making eye contact and taking in the full person. But another perspective on this, listening with your ears and not your eyes, is that women love eye contact. Women, I've said this many times before, I've been there in the car wrapping myself around trying to make eye contact while my husband drives, as he just wants to have a conversation side by side and look out at the road. This is a challenge for parents with teenagers, also within dating and marriage relationships. So listening with your ears and your eyes, I think, is a great tip to better understand your wife and her needs. Second, speak your spouse's love language. I am a huge advocate of Gary Chapman's 5 love languages. Oh, they are great. I highly recommend the book. You can actually get to know your children's 5 love languages, family members. There's even a quiz online. We should post a link to that quiz. We'll post a link to that quiz. Get to know your 5 love languages. And know this, you may receive love and need love in a particular way from your spouse and so forth and others. However, your spouse may need love in a different way. And there's a problem if we're always trying to say love our spouse by giving them gifts, because we love getting gifts, but what they really need perhaps may be verbal affirmation or acts of service, physical touch. And so knowing what those 5 love languages are and which ones are most important for your spouse can be really helpful. Now with this, I'm combining one of the other tips, that is study your spouse. You shouldn't just need a test and for your spouse to take a test in order to get to know this, but truly begin to study and be a connoisseur of who your spouse is, what they enjoy. Maybe they love tea. I love tea. I always appreciate a nice new type of tea. I was actually talking to one of my producers about this, and I was saying, would you do any of these for your wife? And he's like, well, the observation one might seem kind of creepy. If I'm just sitting there in the kitchen, she's really going to wonder, what the heck am I doing just observing and studying? So don't be a creeper. You can still creep your spouse out in marriage. I'm just saying, I would love to hear stories about how you maybe creeped your spouse out while married. Like, is there anything weird you've done or vice versa? Let me know. Share that on social media. Love a great story there. Okay, quick last 2 tips. Remember, let your spouse be their own person. Let go of the control. Let go of the need to actually have to see everything in the same light. And allow for a unique and refreshing perspective from your spouse. Or have we forgotten this in the age of this radical politicization between the 2 political parties, views on religion, and so forth? And finally, remember that we're all called to unconditional love. There are no excuses for not learning to love in this way. It's the love of God who loves us unconditionally. It requires forgiveness. It requires that reminder that love is sacrificial. It's an action. Not that we make excuses for other people, but we truly love a person where they are, even in the face of their faults, but we still call them to more. You're listening to Trending with Timmerie here on Relevant Radio. My guest today is Cristina Pineda. If you have a question for our matchmaker, give us a call. The number's 1-888-914-9149, or head over to my Instagram story where we posted the opportunity for you to ask a question to our matchmaker. Cristina Pineda, welcome to Trending.
Thanks, Timmerie. So good to be on with you.
Okay, I'm excited to unpack some of these questions that have already come in, but we are in the season of Christmas and gift giving, and this can pose challenges for women in particular. We'll touch on the married side, but in the relationship side, women tend at times to go overboard in their gift giving. And you mentioned this prior to the show, and I thought this was fascinating. Why is this problematic in a new or even a relationship that's been going on for a while?
Right. And that's the thing. As women, we are givers. We are mothers, biological and or spiritual. We are nurturers. It's just part of our nature to want to give. And this can pose a problem, especially in the beginning of a relationship, or if that relationship hasn't led to marriage yet, because it can turn men off. And women, I've had to teach women who I work with how to control their giving, especially during Christmas and during these relationships that I just mentioned. And it's interesting because it's one instance in where the golden rule does not apply. So you do not want to treat others you don't want to treat men how you want to be treated in this specific instance. And actually with a lot of things, because men and women are so different and the way we accept and receive love is so different. So were you about to say something, Timmerie?
Cristina, you're making me think of when we were in college. My now husband, we were just studying together, and I knew it was late night, and I had made this like big salad meal, and we were all studying. Well, actually, I think we were the only 2 commuting to go study. So I just like made him dinner too and didn't think about it. We weren't dating. And I remember I felt so awkward when I was like, oh, here, I made you like this great salad. And he's like, oh, wow. And he was so touched and like moved by it in such a way that I'm like, oh no, this was extra. This was too much. And I was so embarrassed. And it's funny because we both remember this. Like, he couldn't believe someone was so generous to him out of nowhere and making him that meal. And I meant nothing by it. But it shows we can show mixed signals and confuse people by cooking for them and giving them too much too soon.
It's true. It's true. And that's just like, it's a similar story. One of our bachelorettes, I love this story. I date coach her, and she was telling me about a relationship where she also learned this lesson the hard way. And she had just started dating a man who she felt really excited about. And he got her an adorable teddy bear and chocolates for Christmas. So she took this as a sign to go buck wild with her gifts for him. And she got him it's expensive Italian wine and his own host of adorable teddy bears and chocolate gifts. She felt, and while she was getting the gifts, she felt great. She felt so generous and altruistic. But then when she ended up presenting them to him, she faced his reaction and had the uncomfortable feeling and truth, like you experienced, that she may have gone a little overboard. And she was actually trying to impress him, unlike you, where you were just friends at that point. But that was a what did I just do moment. And unfortunately, that relationship ended pretty soon after this. But then finally she got wiser, and now she's in an incredible relationship where they're talking about marriage soon. So that is good. It ended up working out for her, but she did learn the gift giving situation. She figured that out pretty quickly.
Okay, Cristina, I love this because it's reminding me of a quote from St. John Paul II's Love and Responsibility when he was still Cardinal of Wojtyla. And he says, a woman wants to be loved so she can show love. And I think that this is so profound because in our desire to show love as women, something that can happen is we can go too far. And we can give too much of ourselves too soon. And so on one end, it can be an embarrassing moment where, okay, I got you way too much for a Christmas or a birthday or a Valentine's Day gift, whatever it is. But on another side, because there's such a strong desire to be loved and show love, women can give too much of their bodies too soon in intimacy. And I feel like that's one of the challenges is there's such a strong desire to give that we give too much even when we don't quite want to give that.
That's I'm so happy you brought that up, Timmerie. And I've in counseling women through this beautiful giving heart that we all possess, I tell them instead because if you don't do anything with that giving heart, if you just say, okay, women just receive, don't give anything, that's not a way to handle it. You're going to still have this overflow of wanting to give. And especially when you're getting to know a man and getting really excited about it. So I've told our bachelorettes to channel that giving spirit. So instead of sleeping with him or instead of buying him an expensive Rolex watch, give to charity. Do volunteer work. You might want to start volunteering at a women's shelter or with foster children. Give to friends, family, neighbors. If you love Christmas and you want to shower people with gifts, do that for other people. Take that impulse and channel it to other people instead of your man. And then you'll feel more balanced. And then you'll say, oh, okay, well, now we're just dating. So since we're just dating, I'm going to get him something smaller, like a box of chocolates or one thing of a box of chocolates or just something simple. Something simple.
Right. And, I feel like this helps you to better understand your own value rather than, I love the idea of channeling that desire to give to the person you're dating, both in maybe gifts, but also in your body and physical intimacy. Channel that, charity, volunteer, friends, family, because it helps you to see your value and continue to grow who you are. And this is important because sometimes we want to give in a particular way. And this is something I saw a lot of working in the crisis pregnancy center system. A lot of people have very generous hearts and they want to give, but I also see this stubbornness that people sometimes only want to give in the way they want to. And when you say, well, actually, we need help with X, oh no, they turn around and they're not interested. They suddenly have a million things to do when maybe all they wanted to do was hold a baby or, drop off a cute outfit. But that isn't always the nitty gritty of what we need help with when women are in crisis pregnancy. And so in some ways, the same thing can be seen here is that we have to learn how to love and give, not always in the way that we want to.
Right. And not even the way that he may want you to at that, and may say that he wants you to at that moment. So if it's talking about physical intimacy, that sometimes giving and the most loving thing to do is saying, no, I want to wait for marriage for that, because that's you're loving him more in doing that too. And then also I've had a few bachelorettes who have told me about how they've basically cooked and cleaned for the man they're dating and or in a relationship with. They're not married. And this is going overboard once again. It's too much. He might want you to do these things or say that he does, but actually it's not going to be helpful for your relationship to overdo it in these ways. Those are things, obviously, cooking, giving him a gift here and there, cooking together. I love it, but not when you're basically doing housework and being his personal chef. That's not okay for pre-marriage.
Or we're not talking about like all the time, you know, you can cook together, you can cook, you know, on occasion, but not like taking up the responsibility of almost not moving in together, but acting as if you are by cooking all the time for the other person or doing their laundry for them or, you know, cleaning their stuff all the time for them. You know, occasional thoughtful gift if the relationship is at that point is one thing, but perpetually kind of putting yourself in the role when you're not married, that's when it becomes problematic, like a pseudo marriage. Exactly. So Cristina, I want to touch on how women can be better at receiving, because often you said, you know, we can give too much, but how can we let essentially a man lead in defining the relationship and what we give and take?
Right. So the first thing I'm going to say is to give gifts that are calibrated for how long you've been dating or in the relationship and those things. We've talked about a little bit before. So appropriate gift giving and gift giving behaviors. Look into that. So that's the first step. So for instance, we talked about small things in the beginning when you're dating, a little bit more for a boyfriend, and then you can go all out for your husband. Now, I think Timmerie, you want to talk a little bit more about married women and physical intimacy and how women can learn to receive in that special time of marriage. So I'd love to dive into that when we come back.
Excellent. So we'll talk more about giving and receiving here on Trending with Timmerie with Cristina Pineda. She's a celebrity and royal matchmaker. We'll be right back, and you can ask a question on social media or give us a call right now.
Do you have a favorite Christmas carol? Hi, this is Father Rocky with another Advent inspiration. There must be hundreds of Christmas carols from many countries and in many languages. St. Josemaria's favorite is in Spanish and is based on a beautiful medieval tradition of providing shelter for the homeless at Christmas time. It's called Madre en la puerta hay un niño, which means, Mom, there's a kid at the door. A little boy, more beautiful than the shining sun, knocks on the door and says he's freezing cold because he's dressed in rags. The mother says, let him in and he can warm up by the fireplace because these days there's no more love in the world. The mother asks him where he's from, and he says, well, my father's from heaven and so's my mother, and I've come down to earth to suffer. Turns out he's the Christ child. Whenever we provide shelter for the homeless, we are providing home for Jesus Christ himself.
Visit us on our mobile app or at relevantradio.com/Advent.
The Relevant Radio studio line is sponsored by Catholic Order of Foresters. Information about employment opportunities and their flexible premium life insurance plans are available at relevantradio.com/Forester.
So, what's trending? Bridging your Catholic faith with your everyday life. You're listening to Trending with Timmerie on Relevant Radio and the Relevant Radio app.
It's our weekly marriage hour here on Trending. Joining me is celebrity and royal matchmaker Cristina Pineda from Matchmakers in the City. You can find her at matchmakersinthecity.com. We're taking your questions. It's not too late to ask. Give us a call at 1-888-914-9149, or you can follow me on social media where I've thrown up the question, what do you want to know from our matchmaker? Quick question, then we're going to get over to this topic of how women can be better at receiving within the context of marriage and intimacy. Cristina, this question came in. What is the number one thing you have learned in your years as a matchmaker, specifically about men?
I love this question. The first word that came to mind was procrastination, though.
Oh, no.
It's so bad. So I love men, of course, but I have learned that a lot of men will put off things if they can. And if that means if a woman is dating the man and things are going well and she's a great possibility for him, but then she ends up starting to sleep with him, he'll put it off, the marriage engagement, for as long as possible. That's why when we talked about that in the beginning, the women over giving, that it's actually in man's nature. A lot of men tend to procrastinate with major decisions. And that's just the first thing that came to mind, Timmerie. Yeah.
Yeah. So almost if women make it too easy, they get comfortable.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah. I know.
So would you say more so that it's procrastination or comfort that just leaves them not making the right next moves?
It could be comfort. And then, but I think it's a combination of both of them, because even with other things, even like their love lives, they'll usually wait until everything is perfectly in order for me to find my future wife. So they do wait until that last moment for a lot of things. That's typically what I've seen. There are there's so many men who are so accomplished and wonderful. So please don't take it the wrong way, men.
Right. But the culture really does encourage women to make men's lives comfortable. And let's be honest, I think many women, no matter what your views are about marriage and intimacy and so forth, tend to easily kick into this attitude while dating, which is problematic.
Mm-hmm. That's
okay,
true.
So we have a lot of questions coming in, and I don't want to skip over this topic. There's a book that came out some years ago, and I found so much of the insights from it very beneficial, especially because a lot of questions come out from women about the discomfort with regard to intimacy and even just receiving the gift of intimacy. Sometimes I think within that context, both from gift giving and Christmas that we talked about, or marital intimacy, women can maybe focus too much on the other person at times. The book's written by sex therapist Joyce Penner and Dr. Clifford Penner, and it's titled Enjoy, the Gift of Sexual Pleasure for Women. What are your thoughts on this book with regard to the issue of women having a hard time receiving?
Yeah, one of the lines that really stuck out to me, Timmerie, was many times women are givers.
Just a quick reminder, Cristina, if there are little ears listening, we want to make sure that perhaps you listen to this conversation a little later on. We'll be brief and, of course, gentle in language, but little ears warning. Go ahead, Cristina.
Yes. Good idea. Okay, so the quote is, many times women are givers and haven't learned or allowed themselves to accept compliments, to soak in touch, or to receive sexual stimulation. And the authors advise starting small in this journey from inhibition to freedom. And I think this was a great example. They counseled one woman to allow her husband to caress her foot and only focus on what felt good to her instead of wondering if he was enjoying it. And so,
Cristina, I'm dying here because I think everyone's like, really? The foot? Like, the foot. But okay, continue on.
I know, but they have this little graph in their book that you start really small, because this woman was always worrying how she was doing, if she was performing well, if she was giving him pleasure, and that ended up not allowing her to enjoy herself throughout the process. So finally, she did learn to continue on with next steps, and then also to trust her husband to take responsibility for himself, which I also thought was a really interesting point, that sometimes women don't expect their husband to take responsibility for themselves. And we try to take this all on ourselves. So I thought that was a great example. And I think for all women, whether married, single, whatever you're in, but it's important to be comfortable with what you need. And even if it's like some time alone, or not always being on call for people, turning off your phone at points, and just knowing that you're worth it alone and that God needs that alone time with you. So being comfortable with being honest and talking to your husband and your boyfriend or about these things.
Well, what I'm really getting from this is the importance for women not to just look out and be like, let me get you the best Christmas gift out there and give a super large quantity. Don't focus even within marital intimacy of like, it's you, it's you, it's you. It's this complementarity, this mutual love, and ultimately it has to do with union. So when we're talking about gift giving and how it can lead to giving too much of ourselves in dating relationships, to giving and receiving the gift of intimacy within marriage, we have to remember that there's this balance in terms of who a woman is that needs to be maintained to the point that she doesn't let go of herself from the perspective that not that she becomes a doormat, but she doesn't see the importance of receiving from others as well.
Yes.
You're listening to Trending with
true.
Timmerie. That's Cristina Pineda from Matchmakers in the City. Cristina, we've had a number of questions come in. Here's one. What do you think about the need to be different in order to be compatible in a dating relationship or future marriage? For example, they gave a little more insights. This question comes from Instagram. If you have a different temperaments or personalities, could that relationship and or marriage down the road still work?
Yeah, I've actually worked with a few bachelors and bachelorettes about this. And I think it is a great balance when people have different temperaments. For instance, a melancholic is really brought out nicely and brought up nicely by someone who's sanguine. And these personality jives are really complementary for each other. But I also counsel our members not to get too hung up over specific personality types, because you're not just one personality. You have a lot. We're so multifaceted that I don't want you to label yourself or label the person you're dating as this specific thing. I want you to see and really get to know the person. We actually spoke with I was on a panel with a priest for the young Catholic professionals, and he was saying how you really want to let the person unravel and get to know who that person is over time, rather than making these snap judgments on what their personality is. So definitely give it time, and then you'll be able to figure out if you're complementary, or if your personalities are too similar, or if they're too different to make it work.
I think that's great. Okay, another question came in. Ways to meet someone during the quarantine.
I know it's gotten harder and harder, hasn't it? Well, I want you to look at the places that are still open and go to those cities. For instance, Timmerie and I hung out this weekend and we went to the OC. So there are restaurants that are still open doing outdoor dining. You might want to, if you're planning a date with someone, you'll do it there at Matchmakers in the City. We have been planning outdoor dates, socially distanced dates, hikes, things like that. So working with a matchmaker, doing online dating if you want to. And also I had mentioned last time about telling your friends that my Christmas gift, I want you to match me with one of your friends who you think is a great single guy or a great single woman. And we'll do a socially distanced picnic, something like that. Or you get together a few people and do a zoo visit together, and you each bring a single friend. Those are, I think, the best ways: matchmakers, online dating, and then these other outlets.
I love something you said. I think it was a couple weeks ago when you were with us. You said those people who you've friend zoned, match them with other people you know. Mm-hmm. I think that's a great way. You know what's funny is so often girls feel bad because they won't say yes to a date and so on. But this is a great way if you really want to give and you want to make up for saying no. Matchmake the friend that you friend zone. This is a great thing you can do to give a gift this Christmas. Okay, Cristina, another question that came in. Follow up on our one earlier. Again, with your years of experience as a matchmaker, what is the number one thing you've learned over the years about women?
I know this is also something I struggled with a little bit, but I think the first thing that came to mind is women often give too much, and giving too much can ruin a relationship and also be really detrimental for the woman's soul in terms of, we talked about intimacy before marriage and those sorts of things. And it is really getting at that balance, because when I say women, you need to learn to receive, I'm not saying you only need to be about you all the time. It's learning that balance of what do you need? When do you pay attention to when do you get upset? When do you start getting short at people? That's usually when you need to take a step back and say, okay, I think I need I need something right now. What is that? Is it time alone? Do I need to take a walk? Instead of always being open and ready for everyone's beck and call. So that's just something to think about for women.
I love it. These are great questions. I know
They
so many
are.
people love the insights into male femaleness in a time when we don't like to distinguish the two. So that's Cristina Pineda here on Trending with Timmerie from Matchmakers in the City. You can find her at matchmakersinthecity.com. I will be right back, and we're going to discuss some important tips again for husbands. And I've heard back from some of you of ways you can love your spouse if you're feeling a little verbally challenged at engaging in conversation. We'll be right back. Underwriting by the Catholic Singles app, an online community of single men and women looking to connect with other Catholic singles who share their faith and values. The Catholic Singles app, the platform connecting single Catholics around the globe.
Bridging your Catholic faith with your everyday life. You're listening to Trending with Timmerie on Relevant Radio and the Relevant Radio app.
It's our weekly marriage hour here on Trending, and in just a moment we're going to talk about ways for you to communicate with your wife when maybe you're just feeling verbally challenged. You don't know what to say, how to stimulate the conversation. So tips on that coming up, and I've heard from some of you on social media, so I'm excited to share some of those insights. You can head over to my Twitter now. How do you engage in more thoughtful conversation with your spouse? Husbands, let us know. Give us a call. The number is 1-888-914-9149. I want to let you know some exciting news at Relevant Radio. On December 8th, Pope Francis proclaimed that this is the year of St. Joseph. So to help you fully experience the year of St. Joseph, Relevant Radio is offering resources to help you grow in your devotion to the chaste spouse of the Blessed Virgin Mary. Go to relevantradio.com or use the Relevant Radio app and click Experience the Year of St. Joseph. Register and you'll be sent a free booklet for the Year of St. Joseph, which includes the 7 sorrows and the 7 joys of St. Joseph, the Holy Father's prayer to St. Joseph, and much more. You'll also receive monthly spiritual reflections on St. Joseph from Father Rocky. Just register and you'll go ahead and be able to connect with this important devotional and growing your faith and growing your love for St. Joseph. So head over to relevantradio.com now or use the app. If you don't know, I am ready to pop. I am 9 months pregnant. Baby is coming any day. Now, I would love for her. She needs to know she's a Marian baby and she's supposed to be here on Saturday for the Feast of Our Lady of Guadalupe. I am settling. I wanted the Immaculate Conception. Come on, Mother Mary. I know you can make this happen. I would love to hear your guess. When do you think baby girl is coming? You can head over to my Instagram or Twitter. We put up a question yesterday. Guess the date. Guess the saint's feast day. I don't know. Maybe it's your birthday. I'm getting a lot of birthday requests. I mean, I'll do my best here, but Our Lady of Guadalupe really does win this one. It is so entertaining talking about pregnancy and everything that's come up. I've received a lot of questions, but one of my favorite tips have been the many self-induction tips that some people are willing to give you for how to make things happen. And these can be both entertaining and enlightening. You know, I stick with my mom's, the good old stairs, hills, walking, movement. But there are some other ones that you go, oh boy. So we'll see if we can get this baby moving for Our Lady of Guadalupe. A couple questions I have received, though, that I thought I'd comment on just briefly. One of them has to do with exercise during pregnancy. And I wanted to talk about this specifically because if you don't know, I'm a Pilates trainer, grew up with a fitness background, dancing and everything. And I have personally, and I start by saying this personally, exercised my entire pregnancy and even all the way up today have maintained doing cardio. Now, I'm not that super runner who is running like a marathon at 9 months pregnant. I have those friends who have done that. I'm just not a runner. I do not do running, but I do cardio. And I think that it's important to understand a couple tips for people who are pregnant now. Maintain your same level of exercise that you did before, but with modifications. Pay attention to your body. Don't strain it. Certain things you can't do anymore. For example, those sit-ups, crunches, and any ab work that really focuses on the, what we call rectus abdominis muscle, your six-pack muscles, that can cause actually further separation, which is referred to as diastasis recti, and some other things, rectal separation, that leads to that coning in the stomach. We want to keep those abs strong. So you can do oblique work that's gentle and pregnancy-oriented, but not those hardcore crunches anymore. And again, you've got to pay attention to your heart rate in pregnancy. If you can't carry on a conversation while you're exercising, your heart rate's too high, that means you've gone too far. You should be able to carry on a conversation while exercising and getting subtly winded. So that's to answer the question having to do with exercise and pregnancy. And again, everybody's different. The bottom line is we need to move. That's very important. I want to share with you a beautiful song here, Ave Generosa, written by Saint Hildegard. She's actually known as a doctor of the church. It's performed by Capella de Ministries. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Trending with Timmerie.
I find it so fascinating when we're listening to sacred music, how there is a lot to be said about the language that is used in music. Even in the church, this church still holds to the most important language for the Catholic people, is all of us being able to pray some of the most basic prayers in Latin. Now, this song was actually dug up. Karen, my producer, actually discovered that this was found on a website for healing chant. Why is it that this is a healing chant? Why is it that we so appreciate this type of peaceful music and other types of, for example, Benedictine chant? Well, I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that we are truly singing about our faith in such a profound way that it draws us both outside of ourselves, and it also encourages us to lift our hearts, our minds, our bodies, and souls to God. Now, one of the comments people have often made about the architecture of Catholic churches in the United States is that they don't necessarily, especially here on the West Coast, elevate the heart and the mind to God with those great cathedral ceilings, with the rising of the windows and everything, versus you go to Europe and there's this experience that takes you up into heaven, draws you outside of just focusing on the bodily dimension of your life. Now, in a lot of our buildings here in the United States, we miss that elevation of body and soul. But what we've seen in the last handful of years has been this return to Gregorian chant and traditional hymns, which are actually the hymns of the church that are supposed to be actually implemented within Mass. It's actually some of the calling for various guidelines for the liturgy. In this song, and the fact that it's referred to as a healing chant, shows that we are hungry for that healing balm of our Lord Jesus Christ, his mercy. Think about Ave Generosa, talking about the Blessed Virgin Mary and her generosity. Stepping outside of ourselves and looking to the great intercession of the saints and our Heavenly Father. I have told you we're going to discuss the topic of things to help the verbally challenged, specifically spouses. And let's be real, women tend to have a lot more to say than men. I'll never forget some years ago, a study came out of Ireland talking about how the female mouth in utero starts moving sooner than the male mouth in utero. Take that to infancy, take that to the sandbox. Little girls chatter along, chatter to the people around them, chatter to their stuffed animals, their imaginary friends. Boys, boom, psh, all these loud noises. I'll never forget, we have one boy in my family. I have one brother. The rest of us are girls. And I couldn't get over when he showed up, all his obnoxious noises. He's just, Mom, can't you make him be quiet? He's like splashing us with his big movements as he swishes his swords and makes explosion sounds. It took a lot of patience, but more so probably complaining on the part of my sisters and I as we got used to just the difference between girl chatter and boy noises. But sorry, gentlemen, you got to do more than grunt in order to communicate with your spouse, but maybe you just don't know what to say, so you shut off. In fact, one of the tweets I received from some of you is that someone said, well, the experts say, let her do most of the talking 70 to 80% of the time. And I thought that was interesting because women want to hear their husband's thoughts. Not that they want them to talk more or a particular percentage, but they do want to have conversation. You know, I can't tell you how many times, what are you thinking? What are you thinking now? Anything on your mind? No. Like, I can't believe men can literally just think about the wall or just think about the television show that they're watching. Even during the commercial break. I mean, who has commercial breaks though? That's really funny that I just said that. I just dated myself apparently because there really aren't commercial breaks. I mean, I don't even have a television, but before that I didn't even have cable. So it's just funny. Anyways, I digress. So here are some of the things you can do to help stimulate the conversation. They're super simple, quotable words you can use. One of them is, what are you most thankful for today? That's a great one. Because she may not know what she's most thankful for, but you know what you could have just done? If she didn't have a great day, you could have just encouraged her to look at the positive side of today, even if it was a lesson learned. This reminds me of an article I read some years ago because I was trying to, become a better conversationalist. Isn't that interesting? I think we could all use that because good conversations are about ideas, not just people, unless you're talking about God. And so one of the questions that I learned was to ask your spouse or the person you're dating, what did you learn today? And I always thought that was really helpful because we all don't always have a good day. And we tend to always ask that generic question, which I'm not even sure we really mean, of how was your day? And often we receive a generic or very short response. Versus, what did you learn today? At least for me, I'm a learner. If someone were to ask me that, or if I ask someone that, it challenges us to go, actually, I should be learning. I should be stimulating my intellect. I should be, even if it means learning about human nature and the way other people work, or my particular reaction to something that I need to work on. So that's another question I'd throw into the mix. Here are a few more. What do you think about X? It could be anything. Fill in the blank, but it's an interesting way to get your spouse's thoughts and wisdom, or even opinion, on a particular issue. I have a dear friend, he's a priest, and it's funny because we talk a lot about how men can sometimes be verbally challenged or not good at sharing their feelings, but I'm always so interested to speak to this friend because he'll always come up with, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this or that, and he always has an intriguing conversation or a desire to share where his mind is at and collaborate and communicate. Incredible priest, but there's one of those moments you would have been a great husband and communicator. I'm just saying because this is something women want, and it can be done with a simple question such as, what do you think about blank? And even if they know nothing about it, guess what? You just opened the opportunity for you to share something verbally about your day that you're thinking about. So it can provide some good conversational content. The next thing that I thought was really good as well, and this is from that allprodad.com again, is what do you struggle with most today? Or what did you struggle with most today? This can address a person's fears, worries, and even if they really need to, provide an opportunity for them to vent. And guess what? You can just sit back and listen. You don't have to solve the problem. Remember, that's important. Finally, is there anything we need to talk about that you're a little afraid to ask? I love this question Because for some, there are topics that people really try to avoid. But in some of the marital counseling and guidance, it's actually recommended that you try to do a once a week or maybe once a month check-in where you open the door for topics where maybe there's some issues you need to touch base on. Or this is a good opportunity to say, hey, is there anything that we've not discussed that we should? This is Trending with Timmerie, your marriage hour. If I'm with you tomorrow here on Trending, again, you can cast your vote. When is baby coming? Father Tim Grumbach will join me. Talk to you tomorrow, perhaps.